I never imagined that at 65, I'd be caught in the middle of such a mess. My name is Eleanor Mitchell, and for most of my life, I've prided myself on being the backbone of my family. Widowed 10 years ago, when my Richard passed from a sudden heart attack, I've managed our family business, Mitchell's Fine Furniture, with the same dedication I've given to raising our only son, James. James has always been the light of my life, smart, hard-working, and kind, just like his father. When he married Vanessa 5 years ago, I was overjoyed. She was beautiful, charming, and seemed to make my son happier than I'd ever seen him. I welcomed her into our family with open arms, even helping them with the down payment for their beautiful colonial-style house in Fairfield County, Connecticut. The day everything changed started like any other Tuesday. I was reviewing quarterly sales reports in my office at the furniture store when my cell phone rang. Seeing James's name flash across the screen made me smile. He was on a business trip to Chicago, a big deal with a hotel chain that could transform our family business. "Mom?" His voice sounded strange, tight with an emotion I couldn't immediately place. "James, honey? Is everything okay? How's Chicago?" There was a pause, then a shaky inhale. "Mom, I just saw on the cameras someone kissing Vanessa in our living room." My heart seemed to stop. "What? What do you mean?" "Honey? I installed those new security cameras last month. Remember, I was checking them from my hotel room, and I saw her with someone. They were kissing, Mom, on our couch." I gripped the edge of my desk, my knuckles turning white. "Oh, James, are you sure it wasn't just a friend saying hello?" "Maybe it looked—" "No, Mom." His voice hardened. "It was not a friendly hello. It was my brother-in-law, Eric, Vanessa's sister's husband." I felt sick. Eric was married to Vanessa's younger sister, Madison. The families often spent holidays together. "James, I'm so sorry. What are you going to do?" "I don't know. I need to think. I'm supposed to be here for 3 more days closing this deal. I can't just leave." His voice cracked. "Mom, could you maybe check on the house? Not confront her or anything, just, I need to know if he's still there, if this is a regular thing." My hands trembled as I clutched the phone. "Of course, honey, of course." After hanging up, I sat in stunned silence for several minutes. Vanessa had always been the perfect daughter-in-law, or so I thought. Images of family dinners flashed through my mind. Had there been signs I'd missed? Glances between her and Eric? I tried to remember if there had been any suspicious behavior at Madison and Eric's anniversary party just last month. Nothing stood out, but then again, I hadn't been looking for it. I grabbed my purse and keys, called my assistant manager to take over for the day, and headed out to my car. The drive to James and Vanessa's house would take about 40 minutes. 40 minutes to figure out what on earth I was going to do when I got there. As I drove, memories flooded back. James and Vanessa's wedding day. The pride in my son's eyes when he showed me the house they'd picked out. The way Vanessa had hugged me warmly at the housewarming party, thanking me for the generous down payment help. "You're like the mother I never really had," she'd said, making me feel so special, so needed. I remembered how Vanessa's own mother had abandoned the family when she and Madison were just teenagers, leaving their father to raise them alone. Vanessa had confided in me once how that abandonment had shaped her, made her crave stability and family, and now here she was, destroying the very things she claimed to value most. By the time I pulled onto their street, my shock had given way to a cold anger. I parked a few houses down, not wanting to announce my presence with my recognizable silver Lexus in their driveway. From where I sat, I could see both Vanessa's red Audi and a black BMW I recognized as Eric's in the driveway. So he was still there, hours after James had called me. I didn't know what to do. Should I knock on the door, catch them in the act? Should I call Vanessa, make up some excuse to drop by? Or should I simply sit and wait, gather information for my devastated son. I decided on the latter. James needed facts, not a scene. He deserved to make his own decisions about his marriage with as much information as possible. So I settled in to wait, adjusting my seat back slightly to make myself less visible from the street. It was nearly an hour before the front door opened. Eric emerged first, looking casually over his shoulder, as Vanessa followed him onto the porch. Even from this distance, I could see her playfully pull him back for one more kiss before letting him go. He walked to his car with the satisfied gait of a man who felt entirely unthreatened, entirely unconcerned about consequences. My blood boiled watching him. Eric worked as a financial advisor, always talking about integrity and trust with clients' money. What a hypocrite. And Vanessa, the woman my son adored, the woman I'd welcomed as a daughter, waving from the porch with a smile, I now saw as smug rather than sweet. As Eric's BMW pulled out of the driveway, I slumped down further in my seat, not wanting him to notice me as he drove past. Once he was gone, I watched as Vanessa went back inside, closing the door behind her. I sat there for a long time, unsure what to do next. Should I confront her? No, James had asked me not to, but sitting here doing nothing felt wrong too. Finally, I decided to at least drive by Madison and Eric's house, just a few miles away in a newer subdivision. Their modern 2-story home looked peaceful, with Madison's gardening tools still out on the porch. She worked as a kindergarten teacher and would still be at school this time of day. Their 2 young children would be there too, Emma, 6, and Liam, 4. My heart broke thinking about them, about what their father was doing to their family. I drove back to my own home, a cottage-style house I'd downsized to after Richard died. Once inside, I called James back. "He was there for at least an hour after you called me," I said quietly when he answered. I saw him leave. They kissed goodbye on the porch. James was silent for so long, I thought we'd lost the connection. "James? I'm here." His voice sounded hollow. "Did you talk to her?" "No, honey. You asked me not to." "Thank you." Another long pause. "Mom, I need to focus on closing this deal. It's too important for the business. I'll handle Vanessa when I get back. Please don't say anything to anyone yet, not even Madison." Of course. I wanted to say more, to comfort him somehow. But what comfort could there be? "I love you, James. We'll get through this." "I know, Mom. I love you too." After we hung up, I sat on my sofa, feeling a strange mixture of rage and helplessness. My son was hurting, and I couldn't fix it. All I could do was wait and be there for him when he needed me. The next 3 days were torture. I went through the motions at the store, checked in with James via text, and kept my distance from Vanessa, though every fiber of my being wanted to confront her. I even avoided my weekly lunch with my best friend, Diane, afraid I wouldn't be able to keep this horrible secret to myself. Thursday evening, I picked James up from the airport. One look at his face told me everything I needed to know. He'd barely slept, his eyes were rimmed with red, and the confident set of his shoulders had given way to a slump I'd never seen before. "I got the contract," he said as he put his suitcase in my trunk. His voice devoid of the excitement this news should have brought. "Largest order in company history." "That's wonderful, honey," I said, reaching to squeeze his arm. "I'm so proud of you." He gave me a ghost of a smile. At least something's going right. On the drive home, he told me he'd decided to confront Vanessa that evening. "I need to hear what she has to say for herself," he said, staring out the window at the passing Connecticut landscape. "Maybe there's an explanation." We both knew there wasn't. Not really. Not one that could make this right. "Do you want me to come with you?" I asked. He shook his head. "No, this is between me and my wife." The way he said "wife" made my heart ache. "But would you mind staying at our place tonight? After? I don't want to be alone. Of course, honey. Whatever you need. I dropped James at his house, then drove back to my place to pack an overnight bag. As I gathered my things, I noticed my hands were shaking. This wasn't just about a cheating spouse. This was about family betraying family. Vanessa and Eric's affair would ripple out to affect so many people. James, Madison, those two innocent children, even me. Our tight-knit extended family would never be the same. When I returned to James and Vanessa's house a few hours later, I found my son sitting alone in the darkened living room, a half-empty bottle of whiskey on the coffee table in front of him. "James?" I said softly, setting my bag down. He looked up at me with devastated eyes. "She didn't even deny it, Mom. She said it's been going on for almost a year." His voice broke. "A year, Mom. Right under my nose." I sat beside him and wrapped my arm around his shoulders, feeling him shake with suppressed sobs. "Where is she now?" "Gone. Said she's staying at a hotel tonight to give me space." He gave a bitter laugh. "Like that's what I need. Space." I held my son as he finally broke down, his body heaving with the force of his grief. This strong, kind man who'd never harmed anyone, being hurt so deeply by the two people who should have been most loyal to him. "She said she loves him, Mom," he whispered after his tears subsided. "Said it wasn't just physical, that they never meant for it to happen. But," he shook his head, "and get this, she had the nerve to say she loves me too." "How is that possible? How can you love someone and do this to them?" I had no answers, just quiet rage building inside me toward the woman who had shattered my son's heart. James eventually fell into an exhausted sleep on the couch. I covered him with a throw blanket, then moved through the too-quiet house to the guest room where I'd be sleeping. As I passed the master bedroom, I couldn't help but peek inside. The room looked normal. King-sized bed, neatly made. Vanessa's jewelry box on the dresser, their wedding photos still prominently displayed on the nightstand. It looked like the bedroom of a happily married couple. The facade made me feel sick. I didn't sleep much that night, listening for any sounds from James. Around 3 a.m, I heard him moving around downstairs, the quiet clink of the whiskey bottle against a glass. My heart ached for him, but I knew this was a pain he needed to process in his own way. Morning brought pale sunlight and the harsh reality that life would go on, altered though it was. I made coffee and was scrambling eggs when James appeared in the kitchen doorway, looking haggard but more composed. "I called a lawyer," he said, accepting the mug of coffee I handed him. "Meeting with him at 10. I nodded. "That's good. Smart to know your options." "I want her out of this house," he said firmly. "I paid for most of it anyway, with the money Dad left me and your help with the down payment." "We'll figure it all out," I promised, setting a plate of eggs in front of him, one step at a time. He picked up his fork, but just pushed the eggs around. "Madison called 5 times. Vanessa must have told Eric I know." And he told Madison. My stomach dropped. "Have you called her back?" He shook his head. "What am I supposed to say? Sorry your husband is sleeping with my wife." "This isn't your fault, James. You have nothing to apologize for." "I know, He set down his fork. "I never thought family could do this to each other." Neither had I. And as I sat across from my broken-hearted son, I made a silent vow. Vanessa and Eric wouldn't get away with this. They would face consequences for the pain they'd caused. I didn't know how yet, but I would make sure justice was served. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of lawyers, paperwork, and painful conversations. James filed for divorce, and Madison did the same. Vanessa moved in with a friend, while Eric, astonishingly, tried to convince Madison to forgive him, claiming it had been just a physical thing and a terrible mistake. She wasn't having it. I threw myself into supporting James, helping at the store when he couldn't face going in, bringing meals to his house, and listening whenever he needed to talk. The furniture business had to keep running, especially now with that big hotel contract to fulfill, despite the personal turmoil. One evening, about 3 weeks after Discovery Day, I was at James's house helping him sort through some of Vanessa's things she'd asked to pick up, when Madison called him again. This time, he answered. I tried not to eavesdrop, but from his end of the conversation, I gathered that Madison was apologizing profusely for her husband's behavior and asking if they could talk in person. James agreed to meet her the next day at a coffee shop halfway between their homes. You sure that's a good idea? I asked after he hung up. He shrugged. Madison's as much a victim in this as I am, and we've been family for 5 years. I can't just cut her off. I nodded, though I wasn't sure I could be as magnanimous in his position. Do you want me to come with you? No, Mom, I appreciate it. But I need to do this myself. The next day, while James met with Madison, I went to the store to check on things. Our assistant manager, Tom, had been a godsend through all this turmoil, stepping up to handle day-to-day operations. But there were still supplier issues and customer concerns that needed my attention. I was in my office reviewing fabric orders when my cell phone rang. It was James. Mom, can you meet me at the bank? Our bank? His voice had an urgent edge I hadn't heard before. Of course, is everything okay? No, it's worse than we thought. Madison showed me some things. I need to check our accounts. Alarm bells rang in my head. I'll be there in 20 minutes. The drive to Connecticut First National Bank seemed to take forever. What had Madison told him? What new betrayal was waiting to be discovered? James was pacing outside the bank when I arrived, his face set in hard lines. What's going on? I asked as I approached. Madison found bank statements, he said in a low voice. Eric's been moving money around, large amounts. She thinks Vanessa might be involved. My blood ran cold. Our business accounts? That's what we need to find out. Inside, we met with the bank manager, a woman named Patricia, who'd handled the Mitchell family accounts for years. I need to see all activity on the business accounts for the past year, James said once we were seated in her office. Every transfer, every withdrawal. Patricia looked concerned but efficiently pulled up the records. As she turned her computer screen for us to see, James and I leaned forward, scanning the transactions. At first glance, nothing seemed amiss. Regular deposits from sales, payments to suppliers, payroll, all the normal business expenses. But then James pointed to a series of transfers, all to the same account number. What are these? Each one is for $900 to $800. Patricia clicked on them for more details. These are wire transfers to another account, all authorized by Vanessa Mitchell. James went very still. Vanessa doesn't have authorization on the business accounts. Patricia frowned, typing rapidly. According to our records, she was added as a signatory last July. I have the paperwork right here. She pulled up a document showing James's signature, authorizing Vanessa's access. Except it wasn't James's signature. I knew my son's handwriting as well as my own, and this wasn't it. That's forged, I said, my voice shaking with anger. That is not James's signature. James was already pulling out his phone. How much? How much has been transferred out? Patricia tallied the amounts. The transfers began 9 months ago, bi-weekly payments of $9,800 each. The total is $176 to $400, I gasped. Nearly $200,000 stolen from our family business. Money that represented our livelihood, our legacy. I'm calling the police, James said grimly, and my lawyer. What followed was a nightmare of police reports, forensic accountants, and devastating revelations. The money had been transferred to an offshore account that Eric had set up, a clear attempt to hide the funds. The transfers had all been for just under $10,000, deliberately structured to avoid triggering automatic bank reporting requirements. Vanessa had been the inside person, forging James's signature to gain access to the accounts, then making the transfers that Eric directed. They'd been systematically bleeding the business dry, presumably to fund their eventual escape together. The betrayal went beyond the affair. This was calculated theft from the people who had trusted them most. The district attorney agreed to press charges for forgery, fraud, and theft. Vanessa and Eric were arrested the following week. Seeing Vanessa in handcuffs on the local news should have given me satisfaction, but instead, it just made me sad. How had we all been so thoroughly fooled by her? Madison was devastated all over again. Not only had her husband cheated with her sister, but he'd also committed crimes that would likely send him to prison. She had to explain to her confused children why Daddy was in trouble with the police, why they couldn't see him. One small mercy in all this was that the forensic accountants were able to trace and freeze most of the stolen funds. We wouldn't get everything back. Eric had already spent some of it on luxury goods and secret vacations with Vanessa, but enough to keep the business afloat. The criminal case moved slowly through the system, but the evidence was overwhelming. Both Vanessa and Eric accepted plea deals rather than face trial, receiving sentences of 3 years in prison for Eric and 18 months for Vanessa, along with orders to make restitution for the funds they'd spent. Through it all, James showed a strength I hadn't known my son possessed. He threw himself into the business, personally overseeing the hotel contract that became our company's saving grace. He filed for divorce, which was granted quickly given the circumstances. He even reached out to support Madison and her children, sometimes watching Emma and Liam so she could have an evening to herself. They're still family, he told me, when I asked why he was being so generous to his ex-wife's sister. The kids especially, none of this is their fault. His compassion humbled me. In the face of terrible betrayal, my son chose kindness over bitterness. A year after that fateful phone call from Chicago, we were finally finding our new normal. The business was thriving, the legal issues mostly resolved. James had sold the house, unable to live with the memories there, and bought a smaller place closer to the store. I'd watched him weather the worst storm of his life and come out stronger, if more cautious. One Sunday, we were having dinner at my house, James, Madison, and the kids, something that had become a monthly tradition. The children were playing in the backyard, and the 3 adults were lingering over coffee at the kitchen table. "I got a letter from Vanessa," Madison said suddenly, her voice quiet. "From prison." James's face remained carefully neutral. "What did she want?" Madison twisted her coffee mug in her hands. "To apologize. She wrote that she's in therapy, trying to understand why she did what she did. She asked if someday, after she's out, I might consider letting her see the kids." "They're your children," James said gently. "That's your decision to make." Madison nodded. "I know, they ask about their Aunt Vanessa sometimes. They miss her." She looked up at James. "Did you get a letter too?" He nodded. "Last month. I haven't answered." "Are you going to?" I couldn't help asking. James was quiet for a moment. "I don't know. Part of me says there's nothing left to say. But another part," he sighed, "another part thinks holding on to anger isn't the path forward." I reached out and took his hand. My wonderful, resilient son. Even after everything, he was considering forgiveness, not for Vanessa's sake, but for his own healing. Looking at him and Madison across my kitchen table, I felt a fierce surge of pride and protection. This wasn't the family we'd expected to have, formed not through celebration, but through shared pain. Yet here we were, piecing together something new from the broken bits of what came before. Something that might, with time and care, become even stronger than what had been. The path ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be prison releases to deal with eventually, ongoing legal matters, and the emotional scars that would take years to fade. But watching James laugh at something Madison said, seeing the genuine warmth between them, I knew we would face it all together. Family, I'd learned, wasn't always defined by blood or marriage. Sometimes it was forged in fire, tempered by betrayal, and made stronger by the choice to rebuild rather than retreat. And as I looked at what remained of our family after the storm, my son, Madison, those innocent children, I knew with absolute certainty that we would not just survive this. We would thrive. The doorbell rang, interrupting my thoughts. James stood to answer it, returning moments later with Diane, my best friend, who'd been another pillar of support through this ordeal. "Hope I'm not interrupting," she said, setting down a pie on the counter. "I baked too much as usual and thought you might want dessert." "You're always welcome," I said, rising to hug her. "We were just talking about the future." "And how is that looking?" Diane asked, accepting the coffee Madison poured for her. James smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes, brighter than I would have thought possible a year ago. As we settled in with pie and conversation, the children's laughter drifting in from the yard, I silently thanked whatever forces had given us the strength to weather this storm. The betrayal had been devastating, the theft calculated and cruel. But sitting here, surrounded by the people who truly mattered, I realized something important. Vanessa and Eric had taken much from us: trust, money, security. But they hadn't taken everything. They hadn't destroyed us. And what remained, this hard-won wisdom. On these tested bonds between us, no one could ever steal away. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left